was actually come flying out.
Okay. How many of you guys have seen that movie? Uh-huh. That's what I thought. Uh-huh. I tell you. Yeah, you can't fool me. Let me just welcome you to week number 3 of our series called What Women Want. And in this series, what we've been talking about is why God created woman in the first place. That's a good question. Very interesting question. We've discovered some really cool things so far, and we're going to discover some other really cool things here today. The first thing we learned is that God created woman to reveal a part of himself that might otherwise be hidden from our sight or from our notice. At least at the very least would be harder for us to understand, because both male and female are created in God's image, and we each reveal a part of God that might otherwise be a little bit hard to understand. It's my opinion that one of the major mistakes that we often make in trying to understand women, especially the women in our lives, or even women understanding themselves, is that we generally ask the wrong questions. Especially in our society today, we're asking the wrong questions, in my opinion. We're asking things like, well, what should a woman do? Or what's a woman's role in the world? Or what should a woman be? Or all those different kind of things. And of course, those are all kind of conjecture, you know. It's kind of beside the point in a very real sense. Because women can do anything they want to, and so can men. I mean, it's no big deal. So I think we're asking the wrong questions when we talk about in that way. But in my opinion, then, the question we ought to be asking is, what is a woman? Rather than what should a woman do or be? Or maybe even more appropriate, why did God create Eve in the very beginning? Why did he create her to begin with? Most guys, as well as the majority of women, are kind of confused about that one, you know? Why did God create us? And you know, for what purpose? If we can understand the purpose for which we were made, then we know where to go from there. So in answering that question, we've already gone back to the beginning, and that's kind of where we're going to be at today as well, to the story of Eve in the book of Genesis. Because once we understand that, or we're going to understand why God created Eve to begin with, then we can understand the rest of that story as well. The Bible tells us that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We all know that, right? God created the heavens and the earth and everything that's in it. And within that creative process, God created this earth in a particular form or style, or however you want to say that. And in my opinion, when you read the Bible, you see that it says that he created from the least to the greatest, you know. He started by just simply separating the light from the darkness and separating the waters and all those different kind of things. And then he created like bugs and that kind of stuff, and on up the chain, the food chain, if you will, until he got to mankind. And we noticed last week, we talked about the fact that God created Adam. And then God trotted all those animals by Adam to see what he would call them. And after he did that, well, then he created Eve. And Eve really is the last thing to be created in this creative process. So taking that line of thinking, then, I'm saying that Eve really is the crown of God's creation. Certainly, man is the crown of God's creation, but they are God's creation and the crown of God's creation. But woman being created last, I'd say that I don't think you'll disagree. Women are pretty awesome, you know. Yeah, they can be pretty ornery too, you know, but they're pretty awesome. They're pretty awesome, I'll tell you. So, just like Adam and just like Eve, or Eve was created to reveal a part of himself or of herself or himself that we might have a hard time understanding otherwise. God created woman to display that side of himself that is more awesome and more beautiful and more alluring than we might ever possibly be able to imagine otherwise. The problem with that fact is that woman is so awesome and so beautiful and so alluring is that Satan is always really good at taking the greatest things that God has created, the most awesome things that God has created, and turning them into something that ain't so good, right? He's really good at that. And Satan has tried to do that and is doing that with women in our day and time as well. Turning her into something that is to be abused and used and lusted after and all those different kind of things, instead of understanding why God created the woman to begin with. So those things are important for us to understand. Now, before we go on, let me just say to you that we have a team of people here and online as well, and thank you for being with us online. We just enjoy having you with us. We've got a really large congregation online viewing us from all over the United States as well as around the world, literally. And we have a team of people that support this ministry both financially and physically in many ways. And if you'd like to join that team of supporters, we just love to have you do that. You know, you can go online right there on the home page at gracelife.tv, not .com or .org, but .tv, and you can make a donation right there. Or you can leave it in the boxes in the back there as you leave. We don't pass a plate here. We just trust that God is going to lay it on those people's hearts that they need to give, and that you will be obedient and do that. So that's cool. We're cool with that. So what I find most interesting about the creation story is that the reason that God created Eve was because something was not right without her. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Really, something was not right without her. Something was not good. As a matter of fact, Genesis 2:18, we find a place where it says that God specifically says, "It is not good for the man to be alone." Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. Just let that process in your brain for a second. Because what we find here is that Adam is in the Garden of Eden, right? Everything is perfect. Everything is wonderful, right? Yes. Everything is perfect. Everything's wonderful. Everything couldn't be any better, at least seemingly so. I mean, not only does Adam walk and talk with God, but they have unbroken fellowship on a daily and a moment-by-moment basis, and they are one in that sense of the word. They have a totally unbroken fellowship together. Adam, God, unbroken fellowship, unconditional love, total acceptance. I mean, guys, think about that. The entire garden to hunt and to fish and to explore and to do all those different kind of things. A place to be wildly happy and content in, right? I mean, what more could you ask for? What possibly could be missing? Well, only one thing could be missing. Only one thing, and that is femininity or womanliness. That's what's missing. In other words, what is missing is all those things that a woman is. Not what does a woman do, or what should a woman be, or what's a woman supposed to be like, or any of those kind of things. But what is missing is all of the things that a woman is. Check this out. At the end of each day of creation, now you remember, and you probably were taught this from a very, very young age, or you've learned it somewhere. Everybody seems to know this innately, or whatever the case might be. I don't know. But you remember that at the end of each day of creation, God looked, and He looked at what He had created, and He said, "It was good." Matter of fact, He said, "It was very good." Everything that He created, He said, at the end of each day of creation, He said, "It was good. It was good." When He separated the light from the darkness, God looked and He saw that it was good. And after God created all the trees and the vegetation and all that other stuff on earth, God looked and He saw and He said, "It was very good." And after He created the fish and the animals and all that other stuff, He looked and He said, "It was good," you know. However, there is a marked difference in what God says about the creation of Adam in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 18. Because in that verse, God says it is not good for the man to be alone. Okay, so after all of these, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's really good, it's very good, it's all those things, right? And all of a sudden we get down to Genesis 2:18 and God specifically says, wait a minute, it is not good for man to be alone, right? Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I think God's a little more specific there than I prefer for Him to be. Let me tell you what I mean. I mean, what happens, let me ask you this question. What happens to a man without a woman in his life? I mean, what do men become if there isn't a woman there, to kind of watch over him or whatever? Well, you know as well as I do, without a woman in your life, men naturally tend to cave out, right? As a matter of fact, I see all over the internet, and you go to Hobby Lobby or whatever, they got man cave signs everywhere. They've even got on the TV, they've got, the man cave renovation or whatever. They've got a whole show that's centered around, making a man cave for the man of the house, right? Well, us guys tend to just kind of cave out, to hide out, to become a hermit, to do our own thing, right? When there isn't a woman around. The problem is that while we're in that cave, and if we're in there very long, we tend to start living a little more like an animal than a human being, right? I mean, the longer we cave out, the longer we're by ourselves, we tend to forget to do normal everyday things like, maybe shaving or brushing our teeth or changing our clothes or taking a shower for several years at a time. You know what I'm talking about. So because of the way men are created, men naturally tend to think that we don't need anybody, period. And especially not a woman, right? But God says, you know what? It definitely ain't good for a man to be alone. Now I'm reading a little bit in there, but I think, there's something to that. You look around you, you can see that happening. You can see us doing that. I'm speaking in a general sense, of course. But God saw a need for Eve, a role that could not be filled by any other man or animal. And that's why God trotted all those animals by Adam to begin with, I think. At least part of the reason is that God wanted Adam to see there ain't nothing there that you're going to say, that's it. I can spend the rest of my life with that one. That's a good one, even though dog is often called man's best friend, ain't nobody going to say, well, I could spend the rest of my life with that, especially if you're a young man, right? So I want you to check out the words. I want you to notice the words that God uses in Genesis 2:18 to describe this awesome creation called woman. He says, I will make him a helper suitable for him. Out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every bird of the sky. Jump to verse 28. But for Adam there was not found a helper suitable for him. That's what I just told you a minute ago. There wasn't anything there found that could really be his, helpmate, whatever, for the rest of his life. Nothing was there. Nothing was to be found. So what I want you to see here, the phrase I want you to notice, of course, is the one that's translated in this particular translation, NASB, that New American Standard Bible, if you're wondering what NAS stands for, is this helper suitable for him. It's also variously translated in other translations as helpmeet or helpmate or helper. Even in other translations, some other translations have a suitable companion or partner. A lot of different things are used, a lot of different words are used there. So taking this phrase, let me just ask you women, you don't have to answer the question, but how many of you always dreamed of one day becoming a companion or a helper to a man? Probably not. Well, why not? Well, a dog can be a companion, right? And hamburger helper's already taken. Who wants to just be a companion or a helper, in the sense of being subservient or whatever that case might be? But think about it this way. You think about a woman. Let's name her Barbara, and let's say that Barbara and her husband are in a car accident, a really bad car accident on the road, on a freeway, and the car turned over. It's on its top. She was able to get out, and she steps away from the car, and she notices there's lots of black smoking, boiling out from under the hood, and her husband is out. He knocked himself out on the steering wheel, and he's hanging upside down by his seat belt. So she rushes back in, even though the car looks like it's going to catch on fire. She finds the pocket knife in his pocket, and she digs it out, opens it up, cuts him loose, and drags him away from the car just as it bursts into flames. And the husband wakes up and he says, she's always been such a helper. Doesn't fit, does it? doesn't really fit, not being a helper. No. But the fact is, those who care for and protect us deserve much more respect and appreciation than that, right? So actually, what you need to know is that the original Hebrew words used in the Bible to describe this awesome being called woman, the first word is Ezer. I'm going to say Ezer. That's how many of you know Greek? Okay, that's how you say it, is Ezer. E-Z-E-R, E-I-E-I-O. And this word, and the second word is the word kenegdo. Same story, right? So what you need to know is that this word Ezer is used 21 times in the Old Testament. This isn't the only place that this word is used for the woman, right? And most often it's translated by the single English word helper. I know that doesn't help any, but hold on, we're getting there, right? It's most often translated as helper. I know that really doesn't help much, but what you need to know is that the vast majority of the time, this word is used in reference to God. Hold it. Don't rush the door, guys. Just hold on, okay? I'm not saying she's God, okay? I know she thinks so a lot of times, but she ain't. We'll find out here in a minute. And even when it is not used in reference or in connection with God, it is never used in reference to someone who is inferior or subordinate. Okay, hold on to that as well. It's never used of someone who is inferior or subordinate. The fact is, the traditional teaching for women is that Adam's helper it's always used in that way, in the sense that she is the one who is subservient to the one being helped. Hopefully you're seeing a problem there already. I hope you are. That subservient to the one being helped. But the fact is, this particular definition would seem to be correct if you simply use that word Ezer by itself. Ezer means helper. That's what it means. But just like a lot of other words in English, it can have more than one meaning depending on its context, right? We have lots of words in English that mean lots of different things depending on the context you use them in. I assume that's true of other languages. English is the only one I sort of know, and I get along with it okay most of the time. And in this context then, it can change its meaning altogether, or at least to some degree. So when you look at the context then, and here's where I'm coming to with the word Ezer, we're starting talking about that word, is that every other use of the word Ezer in Scripture, you will see that Ezer refers either to God or to military allies. That's the word helper. So every time, 21 times, it's either used in reference to God or it's used in reference to military allies. In other words, in all other cases, the one giving the help is superior in that sense to the one receiving the help. We're just talking about the word Ezer. Now hold on to that, because we're going to come back to that in a minute. So let's go on to the second word, second word, kenegdo. And that is translated as suitable for him. This helper is the word Ezer. Kenegdo is translated as suitable for him. That's the word kenegdo. And in the most literal sense then, let me say this, that the word kenegdo literally means opposite as to him or corresponding as to him. Now you might want to write that down because it's important. So in the sense of the phrase Ezer kenegdo then, that means is corresponding to or counterpart to or equal to or matching. Any of those words will work. Or more specifically, and you might want to write this down, an equal but opposite helper to him. Now, since that probably, and it did, since that probably sounds strange, a little strange to you, and it did to me, I'm going, okay, I can't quite wrap my brain around that. So in thinking that through, let me give you this example. In this, an equal but opposite helper to him, as to him. Everybody hold up your right hand. I don't care what you're doing, just hold up your right hand. Okay, keep your right hand up, and then hold up your left hand. Now, look at both of them. Look at your hands, right? They both look basically the same, right? They look the same. However, they are opposites, right? This one has a thumb on this side. This one has a thumb on this side. You ever tried to pick up a box with two right hands? I guess you could do it, but it wouldn't work near as well, would it? Yeah. Okay, that's equal but opposite, right? They're equal. They both do the same thing. I know some of us are right-handed, some of us are left-handed. I can do a lot of things either hand. You know, maybe a lot of you can too. Hand ambidextrous, isn't that what they call that? Nah, I'm kidding you. Equal but opposite as to him or corresponding to him. That's the word that we're looking at here. This ezer kenegdo in reference to the woman is that equal but opposite as to him. And it's not saying one is better and one ain't. It's not saying one has more power than the other one does or any of those kind of things. They both, it takes one hand to wash the other, right? That's what we're looking at here. That's what we're talking about. So he's saying they work better together. They work better together. Yeah, you can work separately. You sure can. One hand can work separate from the other, but they work better together. Especially if you're working on like a car or, you know, taking something apart or whatever. You know what? You don't want to do without that other hand if you can help it. Both hands are important. It takes both of them, one to hold the screwdriver and one to hold the piece you're working on, whatever the case might be. So, man's ezer kenegdo is woman. Both are equal, but opposite. Both are equal, but opposite. Ezer is to be a helper or aid who is always greater than the one being helped, right? I mean, if you need help, that means you're inferior at that point. Now, don't get lost because we're talking about equal but opposite. We both need help. It's not that one needs help and the other one don't. Us guys need help just like everybody else does. We don't like to admit it. Matter of fact, that's why we don't ask directions. Don't need to. I watched The Mountain Men on TV last night. I mean, you've seen The Mountain Men? It's an old one with Brian Keith in it and who's the other guy? Somebody help me here. Charlton Heston. Thank you very much. Charlton Heston are the main characters, right? Yeah. Really good movie. You ought to watch it sometime.
We have cell phones too.
Oh, you have cell phones? Anyway, yeah, all right. So this ezer kenegdo, this counterpart equal, is important. We need to understand that. Because adding kenegdo to the word ezer modifies the meaning of that being an equal rather than being either subservient or superior. One's not superior to the other. They're equal. They both need help. One needs to help the other one, and sometimes whoever it is that needs the help, that means that you're inferior at that point in time because you need help from somebody else. Just like military allies or even God himself. Oh, that's what I was going to tell you, because us guys don't like to ask directions. In the movie The Mountain Man, he says, Brian Keith, somebody asked him, have you ever been lost? And he said, fearsome confused for a month or two at a time, but never lost. Just like a guy, right? We're never lost. Might be fearsome confused for a while, but we'll find our way back. It's okay. Okay, so here's the point. Here's where we're coming to. This is where we're going to end. Before the fall, not only did Adam not have dominion over Eve, okay? In the Garden of Eden, Adam did not have dominion over Eve, and he didn't do that. But he shared dominion over all creation because God gave this directive to mankind. So he shared this with this awesome being called woman, his helper alongside him, if you will. We all know that Eve is a life giver, right? She is Adam's ally. And it's going to take both of them to sustain life. You can't have life without one or the other, without both of them. You know, if Adam hadn't come, if Eve hadn't come along, the human race would have ended with Adam. That's it. I mean, as simple as that. I don't need to draw a picture. So it's going to take both of them to sustain life, and they will both need to fight together. We both need to fight together, not each other. That's what it takes. So when we talk about the fact in Exodus 15:3 where it says, the Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name, we are fighting together in God's kingdom as equal but opposite, because it takes both, not just us and them, but both. God's awesome, let me tell you. And I don't have to tell you how awesome that being called woman is, especially to you guys and you gals as well. Cool. God's awesome. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Amen. Lord bless you.